As the weather warms up, we find it's much easier to reduce our footprint by using less energy for heating, walking, or cycling instead of using a car, and taking advantage of all the wonderful fresh fruits that are back in season at your local farmer's market. So today, we're going to feature one of our favorite sustainable cafes located in the West Village. Ancolie is a fully sustainable cafe that produces healthy meals packaged in reusable glass jars. Only locally sourced and in-season produce is used to create these delicious, amazing meals. So we have Chloe, the owner of Ancolie. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Hello.
for being here.
Of course, my pleasure.
So let's begin with, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with Ancolie?
Sure. So I was born and raised in France, in Paris. I moved to New York 14 years ago, initially for an 18 months internship in finance. And I ended up staying. And when I finally got my green card, I thought I was ready to follow my dream, which was to open a restaurant. So I went back to cooking classes, went to a culinary management degree, worked at 11 Madison Park for a little bit. And then when I had this experience under my belt, I thought that I was finally ready to move forward. I realized that after working at a desk for 10 years, I was tired of the salads and the to-go meals that were available. I thought they had way too much waste in packaging that came with it, and I wanted to find a way to tackle that. So that's really having all of that in mind and quality of simple homemade food that I felt was not really available. I wanted to put all of this in a cafe and in a place where you could come and grab your salad, your breakfast, without thinking about it twice and doing something good for the environment.
So why is the environment and sustainability and all of that so important to you?
I didn't realize that growing up in France meant that I was an environmentalist. My parents would always tell me to shut down the water while I was brushing my teeth or switch off the light when I was leaving a room. I just thought that everybody did that. We would go to the local markets all the time. And then when I moved here, I realized it was completely different. I had a fight with my building about leaving the lights on all day and all night long and telling them that, they could put motion detector. And they explained to me that women were worried and afraid that if they would arrive in a dark building. So I realized that so many things were different, and so many of those little habits were completely creating someone that really cared about the environment, which I didn't realize and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And having eaten at my desk for 10 years and throwing away all the, if you have a sandwich, you have aluminum foil, paper, plastic bag, napkins, 20 napkins, why not, right? And then 2 minutes later, it ends up in the trash and there's nothing you can do about it. So I wanted to try to find a solution for it. And then when I was traveling in Europe a few years ago, I discovered glass jars, and I thought it would be an amazing way to do that. And I ended up designing my own jars that were wide enough that we could eat out of directly. And that was a whole process. And starting with the glass jars, I started researching what else can we do to make sure that the cafe is as sustainable as possible. And we took a lot of steps to do that.
So what were some of those steps? What were some of the, let's say, most effective steps you took that you found made you guys so sustainable?
Well, the first one that was very important is we started working with the Green Restaurant Association. That is a label that gives rating to restaurants throughout the country. And we have a 4-star rating, which is the highest rating. And to achieve this rating, they really go through a lot of different things. Luckily for us, we started talking to them from the build-out phase. So all the paint and the material that we use in the store are either recycled or from recycled content, don't have harmful chemicals. So we really work making sure that the material that we were using were green, that the light bulbs that we were using were LED, the water usage, we have a hand sink in the kitchen to wash your hands. It's a foot pedal to make sure that you don't put the faucet on then forget and go somewhere else. When your foot is no longer in the pedal, it stops. So it's a lot of little steps that we took that I would have never thought of, and I'm sure that this is saving us a lot of money, energy, and is doing something good. And then other than that, for a restaurant, we compost all of our food scrap. It goes by bicycle twice a week in a community garden in this village, and I feel that not a lot of restaurants and not enough restaurants do that nowadays. As you mentioned before, all of our meals come in reusable glass jars that you can return for $2 credit. So people get excited and participate in the program. So that's really amazing. We work with local farms. All the milk we buy, for example, comes in glass bottle that we return to the farm every time we reorder. Some of the steps we took as we grew and as I started looking at my recycling bin and what we were throwing away and what we could try to avoid disposing. So, for example, we had a lot of plastic milk bottles, and I started looking, okay, where can we find a farm locally that would give us glass bottles? So some were trial and error, some we did from the beginning, and I feel that our customers and our community is getting really excited about what we're building.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, what is the reaction like from your customers when they find out all of these amazing things?
So I think there was a pretty big learning curve, one from a customer standpoint, and then two from a staff standpoint, making sure they understood really what we were doing and why we were doing it. At the beginning, when we first opened, I was very excited to tell people that all the dishes came in glass jars, that you could return them. And as typical New Yorker, they were like, but this is heavy and it's cumbersome and it's going to break. Right. I don't want it. So I realized that I really needed to focus more on the fact that it was healthy, local, and sustainable because everybody wanted that. And so once they tried the food and really enjoyed it, and we told them, oh, by the way, if you return the jar, you get a $2 credit, they got really excited because then they were saving money and they were doing something good for the environment. So it came as a second, like as an afterthought, and they were excited to do something good. And also, I feel that in the past, we opened 2.5 years ago. I feel that in the past few months, things have changed a lot. Last summer, the whole plastic straw movement made a huge hit. It was impossible for a restaurant to buy paper straw in July and August of last year because they were out of stock everywhere, because so many restaurants were switching to buying those, and then the supply was not here to meet what people were asking for. So I feel that this is very exciting, and people are starting to participate, and we see people that come and visit our store that have been following us on social media and say, oh my God, I've been zero waste for a while. We don't have this in my hometown. I'm so excited that you're doing what you're doing. So, you know, mindsets are changing and people are moving towards zero waste and being mindful about what they use.
You mentioned saving money a moment ago. How does being a sustainable cafe affect your margins and stuff like that?
So it's a very difficult question because I started operating with all those constraints for the environment, so I cannot tell you the before and after. I feel that from water and electric usage, we're very efficient in what we do. We're also carbon neutral, which is very exciting.
It is.
I feel that, for example, the milk that we're buying is more expensive, but I feel that it's the right thing to do. So it's a balance between the two. I'm sure that we're spending more money, for example, on the glass jar. On our to-go cups, we have compostable coffee cups, which not a lot of stores have, and they're more expensive. But I think that in the long run, people are willing to pay a little bit more to do something that makes sense for them.
Can you talk a little bit about your menu and how it changes, how often and why?
The menu was also a challenging part of the education program. At the beginning, I was only buying local ingredients, working with all the Union Square Market, buying everything locally. And then you realize, so we opened in November. Our first months of April, it started to be nice outside. The only produce that were available in the farms were still butternut squash, but everybody was starting to buy tomatoes and cucumbers in other coffee shop and other salad place, and they were really bored about the butternut squash. And I was like, it's coming, but it's not there yet. So there's always a transition period where you kind of have to go outside of the local just to make sure that you are following what people are asking for. Same thing, our first summer we had a pasta salad with pesto and tomato. That was a hit. And then, starting September, end of September, when the tomatoes were no longer good, I said, okay, we're going to put it out of the menu, and people started complaining and saying, oh, we want the pasta salad. Can you put it back on the menu? Again, so I had to go and make sure we're buying the best quality ingredient that is not local, but we had to make some adjustment to make sure that we're meeting the demand, because we're a business and we need to make sure that people are coming and participating. That being said, compared to any regular restaurant that have maybe 1 or 2 distributor, we have maybe 12 of them, because we have the milk that we buy on one side, and then we have the produce that we buy on the other side. Our sugar, for example, there's no local sugar, but it's an organic, woman-owned business. That's really amazing. So we're very careful about the selection.
You mentioned that people are asking for menu items that maybe are in or out of season, or things that you're trying to transition away from, but it sounds like they're asking for them because it's so delicious. So do you find you're winning a lot of repeat customers because of your delicious meals, or because they want to commit to a sustainable lifestyle?
I think that the majority of the customer come back because they like the food. You know, as a restaurant and as a cafe, we need to make sure that the quality is always the best. So that is very important. I will say with time, as they discover our value and they participate in the movement, they get very excited about the jar. And the fact that every jar is worth $2 credit, when they return it, they're going to want to use this $2 to come back and buy something else. So we're creating a loyalty program with the jars because people automatically come back and want to reuse them. But unfortunately, we're not at the level where people, I'm going to say it's very rare that people come primarily for sustainability reason, but they get excited about it and participating. Yes,
it's like the cherry on top.
Exactly.
So running a successful cafe anywhere, let alone in New York City, is a challenge.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you are maintaining your sustainability rating, which requires assessment and accreditation and all of that. So balancing all of that, it must be worth it to you. Is it, and why?
Yes, I feel that we're doing the right thing. As you were saying, we're trying to set a new trend, and we're trying to educate customers and other cafes around us that you can actually do it. We've been open for 2.5 years. We're still not breaking even, so that's a challenging part. Also, maybe our location is not as prime as some others could be. But people are really getting excited about what we do, and every time I see someone coming back and asking, oh, do you have your chocolate cake, or do you have this product? And you really see that you're making an impact on their day. This is huge. And right now at the store, we're at a 40% return rate of the jar. The first year, we were at 27%. We increased by 13% by increasing the value of the jar. So initially it was $1. We increased it to $2, really to make sure that people would look at them and think, oh, there's some value. I can do something about it. All of our regulars, I feel that they're changing the way they're buying things. When we ask them, do you need a fork or do you need a bag? They're like, oh, no, you know what? I'm going to the office. I don't need one. So I feel that little by little, they understand that every little step that they're taking can make a huge difference. So that's really worth it for me to see that I generated a change to so many people. And we're working on a new concept, selling the same food in a vending machine, which will have access to more and more people because it's not this one location. We'll have many of them. And I'm very excited about the impact we're going to have with those as well.
You must produce a lot of waste as a cafe. What do you do with that?
Surprisingly, we produce very little waste. We take our trash out 3 times a week. And when we do, we only have one small black bag of regular trash. Everything else is either recycling, which we're trying to reduce as much as possible by using glass bottles, for example. And then all of our food scrap goes in a community garden in this village. So it's actually going back to the earth and regenerating and creating something great. So we're very careful about our waste. We weigh it every single time we take it out. And when we buy our produce, we buy it in small quantities. When we make everything, we make it in small batch to make sure that nothing is going to go bad. And we try to use 100% of the ingredients. So we're trying to be creative, and we're trying to generate money from stuff that you would generally throw away.
Do you have any tips for somebody who's trying to convert to a more sustainable life, who still wants to, enjoy a time out at a cafe in New York?
Sure. I think there's twofold. I think for a regular person on a day-to-day basis, it starts with small steps. You're not going to all of a sudden have your reusable bottle, your reusable bag, your reusable fork, everything with you. It takes a little bit more planning, but start with something that makes sense. So if, for example, you sit at your desk and you have a plastic bottle in front of you every day, maybe consider buying a reusable bottle that you would go and refill in the water fountain, because every office have a water fountain nowadays, or have a small set of utensils that you can have in your purse that is easy to take out when you're buying food to go instead of using a fork every single time. For me, the first step, the easiest step, was having a reusable bag in my purse. You know, we always have purse and we always have room in our purse, but I completely stopped using plastic bags. And when I'm out of reusable tote or something, I just carry everything in my arms. It's interesting because in New York, people feel that they give you a bad service if they don't give you a bag. They're like, "You sure you don't want a bag?" No, it's okay. I'll take it like this. But it's refusing. So saying, "No, I don't need to use this. I'm fine. I have my own bag or I have my own fork," and not feeling bad about it. And sometimes people are going to ask you, "Why do you do this?" And just explain, "Listen, every single plastic that I'm not using and that I'm not throwing away is making a difference." So overall, when you start with one, then you get excited, then you want to do a second one, and it's a snowball effect, and you get more and more out of it. And I think for businesses and cafe in particular, there's a lot of steps that they can do. The first one is finding a local composter. Unfortunately, mind-blowing fact, but if you put a head of lettuce in the trash and this trash goes to landfill, it takes 20 years to decompose. 20 years. Whereas if you put it in a compost and it goes in a garden, in a few months it's going to generate soil, and then a tree or a flower or a plant or something is going to grow out of it. So I think that it is becoming part of the law and it's changing, but it's taking so much time to implement, especially for small businesses, that they should all be looking at ways of getting rid of all their organic scrap and food waste through composting, to making sure that they're not generating those horrible gases and making a bad impact.
That is a huge difference, 20 years and a couple of months, for something that is seemingly such an easy switch.
Right. And during those 20 years, it's generating gas that is worse than what your car could produce or whatever. It's just like really, really bad.
So do you have any favorite resources that you've used that helped you find like a local place to compost or something like that to make it easier?
I think that Instagram is a great inspiration. Lauren Singer, Trash is for Tosser, was an amazing resource when I started opening the cafe and looking at zero waste alternative. She has a store that's called Package Free Shop in Brooklyn, and they have a lot of ideas and things that you can buy and use on a day-to-day basis. And there's a lot of amazing people that you can really follow, that can inspire you. If you like to cook, there's a lot of ideas of recipes. So look for hashtag zero waste and follow people. And again, look at the little steps that they're taking to see what you can implement in your daily life.
And you yourself are one of those resources that people can look at Instagram or go see for themselves your amazing cafe. Thank you so much for being here. You are, like I said, a resource of inspiration for people, both trying to just commit to a sustainable lifestyle and enjoy a normal life in New York and go to a cafe, and also cafe and restaurant owners that are trying to use sustainability as a core driver. You're showing that you can be a successful business and do that as well. So that's really amazing. Thanks for setting that trend.
Thanks for having me.